The sun was folding itself into the horizon that evening. The sky stretched wide in streaks of rose and bruised violet. A windmill creaked and turned lazily, its long arms groaning like the tired bones of an old man. The plains breathed in whispers, long grass bending low as though bowing before some secret truth carried by the breeze. Down the dirt road, where the dust clung stubbornly to boots and hems, a woman walked alone. Around her shoulders was draped a faded cloth, worn soft by years of touch, its edges frayed, its color dulled to something between earth and shadow. She held it as one might hold a prayer, close, careful, with reverence born of fear. Her name was known in the town, though her story was not. Folks called her the Cloth Woman, some with pity, others with suspicion. To them, she was a riddle wrapped in faded fabric, a soul that kept something hidden. In the Wild West, secrets carried the weight of danger. But she was more than whispers. She was resilience shaped into flesh, a quiet strength stitched into her every step. Yet under that strength was a tenderness that the world had too often trampled. The cloth shielded her not just from eyes, but from memory, from a shame she thought she carried, from the curiosity of those who looked too long. And though the townsfolk speculated, a scar, a mark, perhaps even a curse, she never told. She worked where she could, stitching torn trousers for cowhands, mending the sleeves of farmers, tending to the sick when fever swept through, never asking more than a coin or a loaf of bread. Children would peek at her, wide-eyed, then run away giggling. Men watched with a different hunger. Women whispered with a different scorn. Still she endured, for endurance was what she had been taught. One late afternoon, when the sun burned low and gold across the plains, she found herself at the well, filling a pail with water. That was when he came, the first rancher. He was a man built from muscle and sun, his shoulders broad, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had always been listened to. His name was passed around in town with respect. He owned land, cattle, and with it, the pride of place. He noticed her first by the way her hands gripped the bucket. Small hands, but steady. He tipped his hat, the charm of a practiced smile curving his lips. "Evening, miss," he said. She nodded softly, murmuring a greeting without lifting her eyes too long. She had grown used to this kind of attention, curiosity dressed as politeness. But the rancher lingered. He asked where she lived, if she ever needed help hauling her water, if she might take in some mending for him. His words carried ease, but beneath them was the itch of curiosity. His gaze did not rest on her face, nor her hands, but on the cloth. Always the cloth. She tightened it over her shoulders as though the wind had grown colder. For weeks, he found ways to cross her path. At the general store, at the well, near the church steps. Each time, he smiled, he offered charm, he asked questions. And each time, her answers were gentle but careful, as though she held a knife to cut each word free. Some might have seen it as kindness. Others might have called it pursuit. To her, it was pressure, slow and steady, pressing against a wound she did not want touched. One evening, as the sky deepened into a velvet night and lanterns flickered along the street, he walked her home. She had not asked him to, but he insisted, saying the roads were not safe for a woman alone. His steps were too close, his hand too ready to brush against hers. At her cabin door, the silence grew heavy. He looked at her not with patience, but with hunger. His eyes caught the dim light and hardened. "Why do you wear that cloth?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost coaxing. "What is it you hide?" Her heart raced, but she steadied her voice. "It is mine," she whispered. "That is enough." He laughed lightly, as though she had teased him. But his hand rose, reaching. She stepped back, her back against the door. Her breath trembled. "Please don't take the cloth off," she begged. Her plea was not loud, not angry. It was fragile, a voice that carried the weight of 1,000 nights of fear. But he was not a man who listened to fragile voices. With a swiftness that startled her, he caught the edge of the fabric. In one pull, the cloth slipped from her shoulders and fell into his hands. The world froze. The rancher's eyes widened, his body stiffening. His breath caught like a man struck in the chest. His hands shook violently, the cloth crumpled within them. Whatever he saw was more than he could bear. It was not disgust, not hatred, but a trembling that came from some raw, unspoken fear. He stumbled back, his voice cracking. God, he whispered, though whether in prayer or horror, she could not know. And then, without another word, he turned and walked into the night, leaving the cloth fallen between them, leaving her standing in the doorway with tears burning her eyes. Her knees weakened, but she would not let herself fall. Slowly, she bent down, lifted the cloth, and pressed it to her chest. She wrapped it around herself again, trembling, but defiant in the quiet way she had always been. Inside her small cabin, with its single chair and flickering lamp, she sat and folded the cloth with care. Her fingers traced its edges as though it were both wound and balm. She whispered to the empty room, to the silence that had become her truest companion. One day someone will see me. Not this, not the cloth, but me. Outside, the windmill creaked, its arms turning slowly against the night sky. The sound echoed across the plains, lonely yet steady, like the heartbeat of the land itself. And so the first chapter of her tale closed, not with triumph, not with comfort, but with a woman alone in her cabin, holding fast to the one thing the world had not yet taken from her: hope. The morning after the rancher left her trembling in the doorway, dawn broke with its usual indifference. The plains did not know sorrow. The wind still bent the grass. The sky still stretched wide and endless. The sun still spilled its molten gold upon the earth. Life, as it always had, went on. She walked into town with her cloth wrapped tightly once more, its edges pulled close as though it could hide the memory of last night. She carried a basket of mending, trousers stitched at the knee, a shirt patched at the elbow, little reminders of her quiet trade. The townsfolk saw her pass. Some eyes softened, others hardened. Whispers floated like gnats in the heat. She did not listen. She had long learned to let gossip slide off her shoulders like rain. But that morning, something new entered the town. He came not with noise, nor with the swagger of ownership. He came on a tired horse, dust clinging to his boots, silence clinging to his spirit. His hat shaded eyes that did not dart about with hunger or curiosity, but moved slow, deliberate, taking in what was needed, leaving what was not. The quiet stranger. He dismounted near the general store, his movements unhurried, as though he had all the time in the world and none to prove. He tied his horse, gave its neck a long, patient pat, and stepped inside. The townsfolk noticed, for new faces were always noticed, but his did not spark laughter, nor gossip, nor admiration. It was the kind of face that seemed carved from still water, plain but honest, unremarkable at first glance, unforgettable at second. Their paths crossed to the well. She was lifting her pail, struggling against its weight, when he appeared beside her. He did not ask if she needed help. He did not demand, nor assume. He simply set his calloused hands to the rope, pulled, and brought the bucket up with ease. She looked at him, startled. He tipped his hat, not with flourish, but with quiet respect. "Thank you," she murmured, clutching her cloth closer. He only nodded. His eyes, when they met hers, did not linger on the fabric draped around her shoulders. They rested on her face, steady and clear. Then he lifted the pail, set it at her feet, and stepped back as though to say, "The task is done. The moment is yours." It was such a small thing, and yet, to her, it was everything. For the first time in a long time, a man had offered without taking. In the days that followed, she saw him more. At the market, lifting a heavy sack of flour for the storekeeper. Outside the blacksmith's, helping a boy catch a runaway chicken. Always silent, always steady. And once, when she dropped her basket of mending in the dust, he crouched and gathered the pieces, folding each with care before handing them back. His hands lingered only on the cloth of the garments, never near her own. She whispered her thanks. He gave the smallest smile. She went home that night with her heart strangely light, as though some invisible thread had been sewn into her day, stitching it whole. There were others in the town who noticed too. An older woman, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, sat on her porch each morning with a cup of coffee, watching the world. She had watched the cloth woman for years. To her, the girl was not a mystery, nor a curse, but a child carrying too much weight. One afternoon, as the heroine passed by, the old woman called out. "Child," she said, "some men take because they're empty. But not every man is made that way. Some are built to hold, not to take." The heroine paused, her throat tight. She nodded, unable to answer, and walked on. But the words clung to her like the warm light of a lantern in the dark. It was at the church steps, weeks later, when the quiet man spoke more than a nod. She had just left, having lit a candle in the silence, when he was there, sitting on the steps with his hat in his hands. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she whispered back. He looked at her basket. "You sew?" She nodded. "It pays." He studied the stitches on the shirt that peeked from the basket. "Good work," he said simply. Her heart stumbled at the plainness of it. Not a question, not a pry, not a sideways glance at the cloth. Just a statement of truth, given like bread, offered without condition. That night, in her cabin, she thought of his words. She pressed the cloth to her chest and whispered, "He saw my hands, not the cloth. My work, not my wound." It was such a small thing. Yet to her, it was everything. Time moved as it always did, slow, sun-baked days stretching into cool nights beneath a wide sky. But now the days had a new rhythm. Sometimes she would see him in the market and he would nod. Sometimes at the well, and he would pull the rope without a word. Once, he left a bundle of firewood at her door. No note, no knock, just wood neatly stacked, the gesture quiet as his nature. The townsfolk began to whisper. Some said the cloth woman had found another fool. Others chuckled that the stranger must be desperate. Yet he never flinched. Their words slid off him like rain off stone. It unsettled her at first, this patience, this lack of hunger. Men had always wanted to pull, to tug, to tear at her cloth, at her secrets, at her silence. But this one did not. And slowly, dangerously, beautifully, she began to wonder, what if he wanted only to stay? One evening, as the sky painted itself in lavender and gold, she found herself walking beside him on the road out of town. Their steps matched without trying. Their silence was not heavy. He spoke at last. "You always wear that cloth." Her heart stumbled, fear rushing in. She gripped it tighter. "Yes," she whispered, bracing herself. He did not pry, did not ask why. He only nodded, as though she had said something perfectly ordinary. His eyes remained forward, watching the horizon. The silence stretched. And then, softer than the wind, he added, "Whatever it is yours." Her breath caught. She blinked against the sting of tears. They walked on, the sun sinking lower, their shadows lengthening side by side. That night, as she lay beneath her thin quilt, she did not whisper the same prayer she always did. She did not beg for protection, nor for strength. She whispered something new, something fragile, something dangerous. Let him not want what others wanted. Let him want my soul. The wind outside rustled the grass, the old windmill groaning in the distance. The land held its silence. But for the first time in many years, she fell asleep with her hand resting lightly on the cloth, not clutching it as a shield, but holding it as though it were no longer her prison, but only a part of her. And so the quiet stranger became a presence in her days. Not a storm, not a flame, but a steady lantern, lit and patient, waiting in the darkness. Little did she know, the cloth that had once been her burden would soon become the very test of their bond. For every lantern must prove itself when the night grows deepest. And their night was coming. The rains came late that summer. For weeks the land had cracked beneath the sun, the fields brittle, the grass brittle, even the voices of the townsfolk turned brittle in the heat. And then, one evening, clouds gathered heavy on the horizon. The smell of wet earth rolled through the air like a promise. She was in the yard, coaxing her small flock of chickens toward shelter, when the sky split with thunder. The first drops fell, fat, sudden, relentless. Within moments, the dust became mud, the road a rushing stream. And then, through the sheets of rain, she saw him. The quiet stranger, hat dripping, coat soaked through, driving a pair of frightened mules toward her barn. He shouted, not with command, but with reassurance. Steady words lost to the storm, but strong enough that the animals obeyed. When at last the barn door slammed shut, they both stood there, dripping, panting, laughing in disbelief at their soaked clothes and mud-caked boots. It was the first time she laughed without fear in the presence of a man. He smiled, and for once it was not small. It was wide, unguarded, lighting his face in a way that made him look younger, almost boyish. She caught her breath at the sight, not because of its charm, but because she realized how rare it was for her to see joy mirrored in another's eyes without a price. That night, as the storm raged outside, they sat in the barn, lantern between them, the smell of wet hay and damp earth thick in the air. The rain drummed its music on the roof, steady and endless, like 1,000 heartbeats pressed into the night. He spoke of his past, not in detail but enough. A brother lost to fever, a mother who never recovered, years of drifting from place to place because stillness hurt too much. His words were quiet, unembellished, as though he was laying small stones between them, building a bridge that could hold them both. She listened, her cloth drawn close, but her eyes on him. When he finished, she whispered only, "That must have been heavy." He nodded, staring into the lantern's flame. "Some things never lighten. You just learn to carry them." Her throat tightened. She knew that weight, knew it well. Days passed into weeks, and with each passing, she felt the space between them soften. He never asked what lay beneath her cloth. He never reached, never pressed. Yet she could feel his awareness of it, as though he carried the unspoken with her, as though her burden had quietly become his too. One evening, as the sun dipped low, they walked together along the ridge where the prairie spread wide, gold and green under the fading light. The air smelled of sage and dust. A hawk wheeled above them, its cry sharp, lonely. He paused, looking out at the horizon. "When you're ready," he said softly, not turning toward her, "I'll be here." Her heart stumbled. Not a demand, not a question, only patience offered like a gift. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. She turned away quickly, pretending to adjust her cloth, but her hands trembled. She had known men who wanted to strip, to take, to uncover, but never one willing to wait until her own hands were ready to let go. Yet fear is a stubborn guest. It lingers long after kindness has entered the room. The town still whispered. Some mocked, others pitted. Once, she overheard 2 women near the store. "Poor thing," said one. "Thinks she's found love. Wait till he sees what's under that rag." The words pierced her, though she pretended not to hear. That night, she pressed her cloth to her face, tears soaking its fabric. She wanted to believe he was different, but doubt gnawed at her heart. Would he shake like the first? Would his eyes widen, his breath catch, his body recoil? The stranger's patience did not falter. He came when needed, left when not, brought her wood, mended her fence, shared small silences that somehow spoke louder than words. One evening, they sat outside her cabin. The sun had just slipped away, leaving the sky awash in deep indigo, stars pricking the darkness. The air was cool, sweet with the scent of sage after rain. He glanced at her cloth, then at her. His hand lifted, slow, deliberate. He did not reach to remove it, only to touch the fabric lightly, his fingers resting on the edge near her shoulder. His voice was low, steady. "This is part of you. I don't fear it." Her breath caught. Tears threatened, but she held them back. She whispered, trembling. "Everyone else did. I'm not everyone else." The words were simple, but they fell on her heart like rain on parched earth. The days that followed were filled with quiet gestures. She found herself smiling more, laughing at small things, humming while she worked. Her neighbors noticed, though they said little. Yet each night, as she folded the cloth at her bedside, fear returned. She knew the moment was coming, the moment when his patience would meet her truth. And she wondered, could she bear it if he turned away? One night, unable to sleep, she sat by the lantern's glow, the cloth heavy in her lap. She traced its frayed edges with trembling fingers, her heart racing as though she were standing on the edge of a cliff. Her voice broke as she whispered into the silence, "Please, let him not shake like the first." The flame flickered, The windmill creaked outside, and the night held its breath. And so their bond deepened, tender and terrifying. The cloth still lay between them, not yet fallen, but no longer only a shield. It had become a test of patience, of love, of whether one's soul could see another and not turn away. The storm of truth was coming, and when it broke, it would either shatter them or set them free. The night of truth came quietly. No storm raged, no thunder split the heavens. The sky lay calm, silvered with stars, the moon a soft lantern over the prairie. Yet within her cabin, her heart beat like hooves against the earth, fierce and trembling. The quiet man sat by the fire, its glow painting his face in warm strokes of amber and shadow. He had removed his hat, set it gently upon his knee, and now waited. Not with urgency, not with demand, simply waited. She stood across the room, the cloth wrapped tight around her shoulders, her hands clenched white upon its edges. Her breath came shallow, her voice breaking as she whispered, almost to herself, "Please don't take the cloth off." He lifted his gaze to hers, steady, unwavering. His voice was a whisper too, soft as a prayer. "Then keep it on, until your own heart asks otherwise." Her knees weakened at those words. So simple, so unshakable. No man had ever given her back the choice. No man had ever said you are enough, even hidden. The silence stretched between them, heavy with her fear, light with his patience. The fire cracked, throwing sparks like tiny stars. And at last, with trembling hands, she loosened the cloth herself. The fabric slipped from her shoulders, falling slowly, as though reluctant to leave its long post. It slid down her arms, whispering against her skin, and pooled upon the wooden floor. Beneath, revealed in the flickering firelight, lay the truth she had hidden for so many years. A scar, not small, not gentle, but deep, running across her shoulder, curling down her chest like a river of old pain. The skin puckered and uneven, the mark of fire long past, an accident from her girlhood, a blaze that had taken her home, her family, her innocence. She had carried it ever since, wrapped in cloth to shield herself from stares, from whispers, from the cruelty of those who could not see past flesh. The rancher had shaken at the sight, not because the scar was monstrous, but because it was raw truth, and truth unsettles those who are weak of heart. Now she stood, bare before the quiet man, her chest rising and falling in rapid breaths, her eyes wet with shame and defiance all at once. "This is me," she whispered, voice trembling. "This is what I carry." For a long moment, he did not move, did not speak. Her stomach twisted. Her mind screamed to snatch the cloth back, to cover herself, to undo what had been done. Fear clawed at her. He will shake. He will leave, just as the first did. But then, slowly, he rose from his chair. He stepped closer, each movement calm, deliberate, as though approaching a wild bird that might startle and fly away. His eyes glistened, not with fear, not with pity, but with something steadier, something deeper. When he reached her, he did not touch the scar. He did not trace it, did not stare. He lifted her hand, the hand still clenched white from holding the cloth, and cradled it gently in his own. "This," he said softly, his voice breaking, "is not broken." His thumb brushed her knuckles. His eyes lifted to meet hers, steady as the earth beneath them. "This is brave." Her breath shattered, and with it, the dam within her heart. Tears spilled, hot and relentless. She collapsed into his chest, her body shaking not with shame, but with release. For the first time in all her years, she let the cloth lie where it fell. For the first time, she let herself be held without fear of being unwrapped, stripped, diminished. The scar remained, yes, but in his arms, it no longer felt like a wound. It felt like proof that she had survived the fire, that she had walked through ashes and come out breathing. Proof that she was more than whispers, more than pity. The fire cracked beside them, shadows dancing across the walls. The night pressed its silence against the cabin, holding their moment like a secret. And in that silence, she knew she was seen. Fully. completely. And still, she was loved. The days that followed carried whispers, as days in small towns always do. Some said the stranger was blind with foolishness, others that the cloth woman had bewitched him. But the whispers did not matter. She walked now without her cloth, the scar visible, her chin lifted. Children stared at first, wide-eyed, but when she smiled, they smiled back. They began to ask questions, not cruel, only curious. And she answered with honesty, her voice steady. It was fire, she told them. Fire tried to take me, but it did not win. And the children, in their simple wisdom, nodded. To them, scars were not shame but story. And hers was a story of survival. The town slowly began to shift. Whispers softened into silence. Silence grew into acceptance. And acceptance, over time, became respect. She stitched garments still, but now with the cloth folded not over her shoulders, but across her table, used as fabric, threadbare, but no longer needed as a shield. The quiet man remained as he always had, steady, patient, beside her. Their bond was not loud, not fiery. It was gentle, like a river cutting through stone, not quick but enduring. And so the cloth, once her prison, became her freedom. She had begged once, please don't take the cloth off. But now she understood. It had never been about the cloth at all. It had been about the heart that waited, the hands that did not seize, the eyes that saw past scars into the soul itself. The narrator's voice softens, like an old man leaning closer to the fire, words carrying not just story, but memory. We all carry cloths. Some are stitched from sorrow, others from shame, others from secrets we dare not name. Some cover scars the world can see, others cover wounds hidden deep inside, and many will try to tear them away. Some out of cruelty, some out of selfish curiosity. But if you are lucky, blessed beyond measure, you will find one soul patient enough to wait, patient enough to sit beside your silence until your own hands are ready to let the cloth fall. And when that day comes, you will learn the cloth was never your cage. The cloth was only the proof that you endured long enough to be found. The fire cracks. The voice grows even softer, carrying its final truth outward beyond the tale into the hearts of those listening now. If this story touched something inside you, let it breathe. Leave a word in the comments below. Tell me from where across this wide world you are watching. And if you too carry a cloth, may you find the soul patient enough to wait. Like this tale if it warmed you. Subscribe if you'd sit again with me by the fire as the Old West breathes its quiet truths. Until then, carry your cloth with courage. And know, you are not alone.